The sun began to set behind the tall buildings of New York, creating long shadows on the pavement. The bustle of the metropolis filled the streets, where everyone was in a hurry to go about their business, not even noticing the little things that shaped the life of the city. In the midst of this chaos, Keanu Reeves, dressed in simple jeans and a jacket, was walking around without any particular purpose. He loved New York for its energy, for the feeling of anonymity in the crowd. That evening, however, something caught his eye. On the corner of a busy street, near the subway entrance, was a teenager. A boy or a girl, it was hard to tell at first, was holding a cardboard sign with an inscription, "Need money for food." Her gaze was directed to the ground, and her thin shoulders shook from the piercing autumn wind. People passed by without even looking in her direction. For some, this was a familiar sight, but for Keanu it seemed unacceptable. He stopped in front of the child, trying to figure out how he could help. He looked sad. His eyes were red as if from tears, and his clothes looked old and worn. Keanu decided to offer something more than just a few small bills. His intuition told him that the child needed not only food, but also protection. As he approached, he greeted her and tried to speak. The girl, whose name was Leah, was reluctant to answer at first, but eventually agreed to join him in a nearby cafe. She looked exhausted, and the offer of a warm place and food seemed too tempting to refuse. The cafe they entered was cozy and almost empty. The smell of fresh pastries and coffee created an atmosphere of peace. Keanu ordered a burger, fries, and hot chocolate for Leah, watching her look around cautiously. Her tense face relaxed a bit when the food was on the table. She ate slowly, as if questioning whether it was really for her. During dinner, Leah told her story. She had run away from home because of the constant fighting and violence. Her mother was afraid of her father, who was constantly aggressive, and Leah could not take it anymore. A few days on the street became a real test for her. Especially scary was the case when suspicious people approached her, offering her work at parties. Leah instinctively realized that it was dangerous and ran away. Keanu listened attentively, not interrupting. He could see how hard it was for her to talk about it, but he also realized that she needed support. Her story was sad, but not unique to the big city. He decided that he would do his best to help. He offered to find a safe place for her to stay. At first, Leah doubted whether she could trust the stranger, but her intuition told her that he was sincere. That evening was the beginning of a change in her life, although she had no idea how big it would be. When Leah finished her meal, Keanu already had a plan of action. He knew that it would be dangerous to leave the child on the street. Her story, while familiar in a big city, was a testament to how easily a child can find themselves in a vulnerable situation. Keanu decided that they first needed to find a temporary shelter for her, where she could be safe and receive professional help. They left the cafe and walked out into the cool evening of New York. The city was full of energy. People were in a hurry, taxis were honking, and storefronts were shining with bright lights. But for Leah, this noise did not bring her joy. She kept looking around, as if she was afraid of being followed. Keanu didn't miss this. He decided to take his time and give her time to get used to his presence. He called one of his friends who worked for a charity organization for children. After explaining the situation, Keanu found out that there was a place in the shelter where Leah could stay for the night. The shelter was known for having experienced psychologists and social workers who specialize in helping children in crisis. On the way to the shelter, Leah told us more about her life. She admitted that she had run away a few days ago after her father had put his hand on her. Her mother tried to protect her, but was hurt herself. Leah decided that she couldn't take it anymore. Her voice was trembling, but she also sounded determined to survive at any cost. Keanu listened attentively without interrupting. He understood that it was important for Leah to speak out. Her words were filled with pain, but they also sounded hopeful. She had already made a big step by escaping from a toxic environment, and now she needed help to take the next one. When they got to the shelter, Leah looked scared, but Keanu reassured her, explaining that it was a safe place. They were greeted by a friendly middle-aged woman, a shelter worker, who introduced herself as Mrs. Carter. She smiled warmly at Leah and told her that she was no longer in danger. Keanu took Leah inside. The shelter was small but cozy. There were soft armchairs in the hall, children's drawings on the walls, and the smell of hot tea coming from the kitchen. Leah relaxed a bit when she saw that there were other children who had also found temporary shelter here. While Mrs. Carter was explaining to Leah how the shelter worked, Keanu talked to the director. He asked to provide Leah with the most comfortable conditions possible and to start working with her as soon as possible. He also asked how he could help and promised to cover all the costs of the girl's stay at the shelter. After a short conversation with Leah, Keanu said goodbye, promising to return the next day. Leah looked at him with gratitude, although her eyes were still filled with doubt. She was not used to someone taking care of her unselfishly. But Keanu was determined to change that. That night, he couldn't sleep for a long time. Thoughts of Leah and other children in similar situations haunted him. He decided that he would do everything he could to give her a new start. He knew in his heart that even one good deed could change a life. The next morning, Keanu Reeves returned to the shelter as promised. He was determined not only to help Leah, but also to find a long-term solution to her situation. In the lobby, he was met by Mrs. Carter, who smiled and told him that Leah had had a good night and had even talked to the other children a bit. This was a good sign, as Leah had seemed withdrawn during their first meeting. Keanu asked to see Leah, and Mrs. Carter led him to a small room where the girl was drawing something in her notebook. She looked up when she saw him, and a slight smile appeared on her face. "How are you, Leah?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "Better. It's good here," she replied, though her voice was still quiet. Keanu saw that she was beginning to trust him. He explained that he wanted to help her find not only temporary protection, but a new start in life. To do this, he reached out to his contacts again to find a way to help her in the long term. After speaking with Leah, Keanu met with the director of the shelter to discuss a plan of action. Together, they decided to involve social services who could find a foster family or a safe environment for Leah to stay in for a longer period of time. In addition, Keanu offered to fund therapy for Leah to help her overcome her trauma. Keanu also found out that the shelter cooperates with organizations that work to combat human trafficking. They could open an investigation into the people who offered Leah a dangerous job. This information was important to him because he wanted to make sure that those who try to take advantage of children's vulnerability are stopped. During the day, Keanu spent time with Leah, trying to learn more about her dreams and interests. The girl told him that she loves to draw and dreams of becoming an artist. She showed him her drawings, which turned out to be surprisingly talented. This gave Keanu an idea. He decided that he could help Leah develop her talent. In the evening, he organized a meeting with the volunteers who worked at the shelter. Together, they created a plan to provide Leah with stability and the opportunity to develop. One of the points of this plan was to find an art mentor for her who could help her realize her abilities. That day was the beginning of a new chapter for Leah. She began to realize that there are people in the world who want to help her unselfishly. And for Keanu, it was a reminder of how important it is not to remain indifferent to those who need help. A few weeks passed, and Leah's life began to gradually change. Thanks to the efforts of Keanu Reeves and the shelter staff, the girl was able to get the stability and support she had only dreamed of before. She continued to live in the shelter, but now her days were filled with meaning and new opportunities. Keanu kept his word and came to visit Leah often. He gave her a set of professional paints and a drawing pad, which made her really excited. Leah started painting every day, creating amazing pictures that reflected her dreams, fears, and hopes. Drawing became a kind of therapy for her, helping her to express the feelings that had accumulated over the years of hardship. Meanwhile, Keanu got the local art school involved. He arranged for Leah to attend classes for talented children. The first day at school was a real challenge for her, as she had long been afraid of being around new people. But the teachers and students greeted her warmly, and soon she felt part of this creative community. At the same time, social services began looking for a foster family for Leah. Keanu actively followed this process to make sure that the girl would get to people who could really support her. His personal involvement in the case ensured that all decisions were made with Leah's best interests in mind. One day, Keanu brought Leah to a gallery where he organized a small exhibition of her work. It came as a big surprise to the girl. Her paintings, which she had been embarrassed to show anyone before, were now hanging on the walls, and people were looking at them with admiration. Keanu invited his friends and acquaintances to the exhibition, who supported Leah not only with words, but also bought several of her drawings to help her raise funds for further education. Leah was amazed. For the first time, she felt that her talent and efforts mattered. Her eyes shone with happiness, and she thanked Keanu for believing in her when she no longer believed in herself. Along with Leah's creative development, Keanu did not forget about her safety. The organization that was investigating the activities of the suspicious people who offered Leah work made progress. A child exploitation network was exposed, and several suspects were arrested. This news brought Leah additional relief because she now knew that these people would no longer be able to harm her or other children. Week by week, Leah began to believe in her future. She was no longer the scared little girl who begged for money on the street. Thanks to the support of Keanu and many caring people, her life has become a story of hope, struggle, and a new beginning. Several months passed, and Leah's life continued to change for the better. Thanks to the efforts of Keanu Reeves and many other caring people, the girl finally found a foster family that was able to give her a real home. It was a warm and loving family that from the very first days began to support Leah in her aspirations and help her adapt to her new life. Keanu never stopped keeping in touch with Leah. He visited her regularly, learned about her progress at art school, and just spent time with the girl, showing her that she could always count on him. These meetings were extremely important for Leah because Keanu became not only her friend, but also an example of how kindness can change lives. One day, Leah received an invitation to participate in a major exhibition for young artists. It was an important step in her life, and she carefully prepared for this moment. At the exhibition, her work attracted a lot of attention. Visitors admired her paintings, which not only showcased her talent, but also told stories of strength, hope, and overcoming difficulties. Keanu was present at the exhibition, and when Leah saw him in the hall, she couldn't contain her emotions. He came up to her and said, "This is your time to shine, Leah. You deserve all of this and more." Those words stayed with her forever. Leah realized that her journey was just beginning, and now she had every chance to build her life the way she had always dreamed. In addition to her artistic achievements, Leah also began to participate in volunteer initiatives aimed at helping homeless children. She shared her story, inspiring others to never lose hope. Her example showed that even in the darkest moments, you can find light if there are people who are willing to help. For Keanu, this story was another reminder of how important every good deed is. He saw how Leah turned from a scared girl into a confident young person. Her success was the best reward for him. Leah's story ended not as a finale, but as the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She was no longer alone, and her talent willpower, and the support of people who cared paved the way for a future full of opportunities. And for Keanu, it was another story that proved that even the smallest act of kindness can change fate.